Welcome, Mark. У Марка очень большой опыт работы в птицеводстве. Это наш старый друг и коллега. Он работает в одной из крупнейших практик в Нидерландах, имеет опыт работы со всеми видами сельскохозяйственной птицы. Участвовал с нами совместно в написании книги «Сигналы индеек» и участвовал также в определенных работах, то есть в работе над повышением квалификации в Нидерландах, работы ветврачей, специализирующих на птицах. Разрабатывал определенную стратегию оценки качества и профессионализма. Тогда поприветствуем Марка и предоставим ему экран. Mark, please.
Well, let's see if we can share the
yes,
screen.
Share the screen, please. It's on the bottom, the green button.
Yeah, I'm looking. Sorry, I don't know. No, I'm coming somewhere.
Yeah, now start the presentation.
You see the screen?
Yes, but just try to, yes. Good, thank you.
Very good.
I already introduced you. Yeah, go on.
Well, thank you very much, Edward, for my introduction and for the invitation. I'm glad I can present to you something from the far Netherlands. I've placed myself into the International Space Station, so I can see you in Penza from outer space. Well, I mentioned my presentation. Keeping turkeys is keeping the balance. Because I'm a practitioner and not a scientist, I will talk with you about practical experiences and my view on keeping turkeys. And I'm convinced that we can do a lot preventive work by just keeping the balance. I would like to introduce myself a little bit because not everyone knows me. I graduated in 1991 and I'm working in the poultry business since 30 years. And I'm co-owner of veterinary practice in El, small village in the Netherlands, and from Poultry Vets. Well, what is Poultry Vets? Poultry Vets is a joint venture of 6 poultry practices, and we are working with 15 poultry vets from out of 3 locations in the Netherlands. We are involved in all fields in the poultry business, working in Holland, Belgium, and Germany. And we do also some consultancy work for foreign countries, including the Mate. In the past, I have visited you, I think 6-7 times in the past, and I enjoyed it really much to go to Russia and to see how you are fattening turkeys in Russia. This is the group with a photograph. I wasn't on the photo, so I placed myself with a photograph from Penza in the past, where there was a lot of snow and cold weather. Well, what are the contents of my presentation? I will tell you something about managing turkeys, because I think that is the basis of keeping turkeys. I will tell you something about low-path avian influenza, about hemorrhagic enteritis. The previous speakers also told something about hemorrhagic enteritis, but I will let you know what my point of view is. And I will tell you something about probiotics to prevent coccidiosis and Clostridium. Well, as I told you already, the key word of my presentation is balanced. Balance to keep turkeys. And the picture with the elephant shows what we mean by this. Why is the balance in keeping turkeys so difficult? Well, that's because we keep heavy turkey breeds with high growth rates. That means that you have to put in a good feed quality with high protein levels. And of course, we don't use any growth promoters anymore in the feed since a long time. And we have to reduce the antibiotic use, especially in the Netherlands, but all in Europe, we are reducing antibiotic use because of human health issues, and resistance. What are the results of this challenge? Well, we have a competition between Turkey health and between economics and technical figures. Because when you have a bad gut health, that means that you get wet litter. If you get wet litter, you get a bad climate. And with a bad climate, you also get less growth, lower resistance, more stress, and that leads to more infections. So you are coming in a vicious circle. What are the key points for a good turkey health, in my opinion? Well, that's in the first place, the climate in the house and ventilation. If you have a good climate ventilation, that is already the half the success to keep turkeys. Of course, feed quality is very important. If you want to have a high daily growth rate, then you need a good quality of feed with a good composition and a good structure. And the third point is vaccination to prevent diseases. If you can do these 3 points in a good way, if you can have a good climate, good feed quality, and a good vaccination program, then you can succeed to keep turkeys in good balance. Maybe this is, I think I'm a little bit behind, Edward, with the Russian translation. Let's see, yes. Well, maybe it's a disappointment for you because it's not all about diseases and therapies. I'm a veterinarian and we are educated to know everything about diseases and therapies. But in the past years, I learned that it's far more important to have some understanding of the management of turkeys, how to keep them in balance. And if you succeed in that, then diseases are less important and also therapies are less important. It's much more about prevention of diseases by influencing the circumstances. And it all starts with a good quality poult at day one. Of course, if the start is good, then you can work on fattening turkeys in a proper way. Well, I start with my first subject about diseases, and that is in the respiratory tract. In this seminar, we will focus on the low-part avian influenza. Why is low-part avian influenza so important? Well, that's simple because it's a sniper killer, I called it. What do I mean with a sniper killer? Well, if you have low-part avian influenza in your flock, you see only mild respiratory symptoms, a low morbidity and mortality, and it is very easy to be mixed up with TRT, ORT, and other respiratory pathogens. Of course, you can also have secondary bacterial infections like E. coli, like ORT, like Bordetella avium, as presented in the previous presentations. So it looks like a very mild respiratory disease with some bacterial challenge. Therefore, it is easy to miss because it looks very much like a normal respiratory disease, a little bit like TRT or ORT, and you don't recognize it immediately. So if not recognized or diagnosed in time, it can develop to a high-part avian influenza. And if you get a high-part avian influenza, then disaster happens. And you know it all too well, I think, as we all know, because we were all infected with high-part avian influenza in our turkey industries, in our poultry industry. Well, in Holland, we learned this in 2003. maybe some people of you know it, but in 2003, we had an outbreak of high-part avian influenza H7N7, and eventually 30 million birds were killed, and it was a real disaster for the Dutch poultry industry. 30% of our total poultry industry was destroyed, stamped out in no time, and more than 1,000 people were infected because it was also a zoonosis. People were also infected with this virus, and even one vet, a colleague, died of this infection. Very sad news. So that was the first time we experienced I would say the very it has an enormous impact on the whole poultry industry, and afterwards we were talking with each other, what can we do to prevent such a disaster in the future? So this resulted in a good monitoring program. We started in 2003 with a good monitoring program of our total poultry industry. And a lot of people, also foreign colleagues, were telling us, well, you are a little bit crazy, because when you look so close to low-part avian influenza, then you create a problem and you don't protect them from disease. Well, we didn't agree with them, because we learned that that this monitoring program has saved us in the past years from outbreaks of high-part avian influenza in a great scale. I will explain that to you in the next slides. What does this monitoring program for low-part avian influenza mean? Well, we take blood samples from every flock going to the slaughterhouse, including layers, broilers, ducks. Also, the free-range layers are monitored every 3 months by taking blood samples. For turkeys, we take 30 blood samples from every flock going to the slaughterhouse, with a minimum of 5 per house. And then we do a general screening on the ELISA H5, H7. And if we have positive results in the ELISA H5, H7 test, then the serum goes to the National Reference Lab for test on specific ELISA H5 and H7. We have a kind of alarm system, you can call it, and this alarm system is built on 3 phases. Phase 1 is that the farmer has to call his vet if there are symptoms of a disease. If there is a drop in feed intake of 5% or more 2 days in a row, or a drop in egg production of 5% or more 2 days in a row. That's the first phase, that the farmer has to call his vet. Phase 2 is that we immediately have to call the authorities if there is more than 0.5% mortality 2 days in a row in layers, breeders or broilers, which are more than 10 days old. And we have to call the authorities when there is more than 1% mortality in turkeys 2 days in a row, or when there is 3% or more mortality in a week in avian influenza susceptible birds. Phase 3 is, of course, that we have to call the authorities immediately in case of an avian influenza suspicion. Well, in case of a suspicion of avian influenza, there is a visit of the farm with the responsible vet, one vet from the national authorities, and one vet from the animal health department in Deventer in Holland. And together we go to the farm and we make an inspection, what is going on, look at the clinical symptoms, about the severity of the disease, and depending on the symptoms, we collect PCR, tracheal swabs, blood samples, and birds for investigation in the National Reference Lab. And in case the responsible vet suspects another disease than avian influenza, but can't be sure if avian influenza is involved, he can send exclusion swabs, tracheal and cloacal swabs to the National Reference Lab without the farm being blocked by the authorities. We call this the early warning system. And that's a big advantage because you have a lot of disease with high mortality or very sick birds, and you never can say that there is no avian influenza involved. And in these cases, we can send these swabs to the reference lab, and then we can exclude the avian influenza as being a source of illness. Well, since we have this system, we are not free from avian influenza, but we are not surprised anymore by an infection, and we can prevent spreading of the virus just by carelessness. As in 2003, we learned afterwards that the virus was already several months in our poultry business, but we didn't recognize it. We didn't look for it, we didn't test for it. And so it could happen that it developed in a high part avian influenza and that our poultry industry was almost destroyed in that year. So in case of an infection with avian influenza, we will monitor and we will detect it in an early stage and just prevent that it's developing into a high part avian influenza. If there is a case of avian influenza, the contact farms will also be visited by the authorities to check if there are problems or samples are being taken. So therefore, we have the visitor registration just to see how people are moving between farms and which contacts there are. Okay, that is all about the low part avian influenza. Let's go to the digestion tract, and I can tell a lot about feed composition, feed structure, feeding times, but and the digestion problems, diseases, but I will focus on hemorrhagic enteritis and the use of probiotics in case of coccidiosis and Clostridium infections. Well, let's talk about hemorrhagic enteritis. It's a kind of law in the turkey industry that you have to vaccinate against hemorrhagic enteritis. I think in most turkey industries, this is very common. But as I told you in the beginning of this presentation, I have learned that not always diseases are the most important issues in keeping turkeys. If you can keep them in the right circumstances, then it's also possible to fatten turkeys without vaccinating. And I have several farms in my practice who don't vaccinate against hemorrhagic enteritis at all, and they don't have really problems with hemorrhagic enteritis. It all depends on circumstances, resistance of the turkeys, and the general health situation. So it's again about balance. That you don't vaccinate against hemorrhagic enteritis doesn't mean that turkeys don't get hemorrhagic enteritis. Every turkey comes in contact with the hemorrhagic enteritis virus in its life, but in a lot of cases, it's in a subclinical way, and you can only find antibodies at the end of the fattening period. If circumstances are good and the general health is good, this isn't a big problem. One of the specific issues we have here in the Netherlands, or maybe I should say in Europe, is that we don't have the mild vaccines as in the USA. And as Uri Ashas told us, we don't also have the injection kilt vaccine. So we have to depend on the Dindoral. This vaccine is originally registered in France, and we can use this in Europe, but it's a very pathogenic vaccination strain. And sometimes the vaccine gives more problems than preventing them. So that we all have also a little bit aversion of vaccinating hemorrhagic enteritis. Especially when you have to vaccinate in combination with coccidiosis and Clostridium, then a vaccination against hemorrhagic enteritis can be a very big problem. But if you can control coccidiosis and Clostridium better, then hemorrhagic enteritis is less a problem. The most problems with hemorrhagic enteritis are the result of immune suppression and secondary bacterial infections like Clostridium and E. coli. Well, last years we saw more problems with fatty livers and hemorrhagic enteritis, especially in turkey hens. I will explain to you what I mean by this. It's not really a fatty liver, but we should say a liver degeneration. And I think it has something to do with the energy level in the feed or with the energy demand of the turkey at the time of problems. If energy in the feed is too low or they can't digest the feed good enough, so they don't get enough energy through the feed as a result of, for example, hemorrhagic enteritis infection, then the ATP production in liver cells can't keep up with the demands and energy factories in the cell will explode. This is not scientific evidence, but I think this is what is happening in these turkeys. Because we see when we give them more energy, we don't have less problems. We have farms which only fatten turkey hens, which is a special situation. People don't want to fatten the toms, the males, because these heavy birds have more health issues and are not so easy to manage. So some farms choose to fatten only turkey hens. And we see this problem especially in the turkey hens because they just grow very fast after the 10 weeks of age. And when we vaccinate with hemorrhagic enteritis, this gives good results in these farms. So I don't say that you don't have to vaccinate against hemorrhagic enteritis. It depends on the circumstances and upon the farm and the way they are keeping their turkeys. Well, I have some pictures from this problem. You can see here the gizzard with some retained blood in the cuticula and also a very reddish brown colored duodenum, which are the remains of blood digestion and also bile, bile which is only in the gut standing because these animals don't eat anymore. On the right side, you see a very typical liver with the white areas and also a very spotted liver, which fits in the disease of hemorrhagic enteritis and also the fatty livers, liver degeneration. Here you see a close-up picture from these livers with the typical white areas. You can see them here in the top of this liver, and there very clear the white areas with liver degeneration, but also the spotted aspect of the liver. And another close-up photograph from a liver with fatty liver syndrome. Well, as the previous presenters told us, time of vaccination, which we choose to vaccinate our birds between 21 and 28 days. And as Udi told us already, Dr. Udi Ashas, that it depends also on maternal antibodies, but is there a reliable way of measuring maternal antibodies? In the past, we did some blood tests with ELISA, but the results were often very unpredictable. And we had the problem that if we had to vaccinate in an early stage, there was also high pressure of coccidiosis and Clostridium, and then it was very difficult to vaccinate them against hemorrhagic enteritis. Nowadays, when we have a better understanding of gut integrity and we can manage coccidiosis and Clostridium in a better way, it's not that difficult to vaccinate anymore against hemorrhagic enteritis, but we normally vaccinate them in the 4th week of their life. Well, as I told you already, a problem with vaccination between 1 and 28 days of age is that there are also coccidiosis and Clostridium infections in this age, and it is difficult to vaccinate because it can make problems worse. So we learned to focus on a good gut integrity and resistant general health of the turkeys. What also can help is adding vitamin BECK and amino acids in the drinking water, just to support the birds in their immunity, in their gut health, and in their liver health. We see good results of these drinking water therapies. Well, of course, some pictures from hemorrhagic enteritis. I think I took these pictures, or Edward took them in Penza, but very typical pictures from a marbled spleen, a spotted liver, and a very red gut with even blood in the gut. Well, let's go to my last subject. And the last subject I will speak about are probiotics. Well, several years ago, we had very, very big problems with coccidiosis, Clostridium, and blackhead, and problems became worse and worse. We had bad effect of medicines which were used, like tolozeril and phenoxypen. We had some better results with tylosin, but we had to reduce antibiotic use. We had several flocks with very high mortality, mainly due to necrotic enteritis, with up to 1,000 birds in just 1 to 2 days, and also very sick birds that almost didn't want to drink anymore. So it was very, very difficult to apply medicines to the birds. Bad gut integrity seems also a trigger for blackhead with high mortality. So in the past, we had really big problems with blackhead with up to 100% mortality. I will go on. I heard some noise on the background. Okay, well, bad gut integrity seems also a trigger for blackhead, I was telling you. And in the past, we had very high mortality, up to 100%, with young birds, young poults of 3-4 weeks of age. Nowadays, we have far much, less problems with blackhead. I'm very happy with that because it's a very sad disease when it happens on a turkey farm. Well, I was telling you about the problems we had several years ago with high mortality due to necrotic enteritis. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Let's see. Yeah, I'm here in my good slides. Necrotic enteritis. It's almost always a secondary problem to coccidiosis. And the trigger is the damage of the mucosa of the gut, with a bad digestion of feed, overgrowth of Clostridium, and of course you know that Clostridium likes the circumstances in debris necrotic tissue with low oxygen levels. It can grow very fast, and it's not mainly the Clostridium which is the big problem, but the Clostridium toxin, which makes the birds very sick and they die very fast. Here, a typical picture of necrotic enteritis in a turkey gut, and you can all see the necrotic tissue on the gut wall. When necrotic enteritis is a primary problem, in most cases this is due to high feed intake or high protein content of the feed. So if this is a problem, you can go to the next phase in the feed and lower your protein levels. And even in turkey hens, we have some farms who restrict the feed intake and just give them what they have to eat according to the standards for that day. But that's only in turkey hen farms that we do that. When we are talking about probiotics, well, because of these severe problems and because we had to reduce antibiotic use, I started to look for alternatives. I was just challenging myself, what can I do to make circumstances better, to prevent these high mortality, to prevent these very sick, ill birds, and what can I do to reduce antibiotic use? And as a result, I started with probiotics in the drinking water in a preventive way. What do I mean with that? Well, the most difficult time in a turkey life, I think, is the age of 3 to 5 weeks. When the birds are 3 to 5 weeks old, you have a high stocking density before transfer to the fattening houses, with bad climate circumstances, with bad litter quality. There's a lot of stress after transfer to the fattening houses. You have a change in drinking water and feeding systems for the males, change in feed composition, maternal antibodies are disappearing, and this is the predisposing period for coccidiosis, histamoniasis, hemorrhagic enteritis, and some gut viruses. So a very challenging age for these young birds. The probiotic I use at the moment is Clostat from Cayman, and this is a composition of Bacillus subtilis spores, and these Bacillus subtilis spores will develop in the gut to Bacillus subtilis bacteria, and they have a competition with Clostridium. We give a high dosage, so 200 grams per 1,000 liter instead of 50 grams, what is prescribed on the label, but we give them a far much higher dose of 200 grams. And we see that it works. We start at an early age before you can see anything in the house, so the birds are still healthy. There's a good litter quality, good digestion, but we know that after 2 weeks of age, problems with coccidiosis and Clostridium will start. So we start at an early age from 2 weeks on, sometimes even a little bit earlier, to give them probiotics, in this case Clostat, through the drinking water. Sometimes you can see that water-feed ratio is a useful tool to decide when to start with the Clostat, because when there is some issue in the gut integrity, then you often see that water-feed ratio is going up. So they drink more water than they eat. And this is a clear sign that there is something happening in the gut and that you have to react. Well, what I have learned is that Clostridium is far more important than coccidiosis. If you can keep away the Clostridium problems, you see only a subclinical coccidiosis infection without severe problems. And of course, we have still ionophores in the feet. So it's not that important to treat the coccidiosis infection, because when you can keep away the Clostridium, well, they don't have much problems with the coccidiosis, is my experience. And of course, we add also some oregano in the feet, because we have learned that oregano in the feet seems to help to make the birds less susceptible to blackhead or histomoniasis. What are the results of this? Well, we have far much less antibiotic use, a very good livability of the turkeys, so lower mortality, better body weights at the time of transfer, and a better uniformity. And I've learned that it's possible to fatten turkeys without any antibiotics and still technical good results. I have some slides with technical results of some turkey farms who use Closted intensively as described, just to let you know that we can make good technical results without using antibiotics, but using probiotics. I have to excuse because these slides are in Dutch, but I will translate it for you. What you see here is the weight development of some turkey hens, a turkey hen flock. And what you can see that after the transfer to the fattening houses at 28
we don't see
days.
That, Mark.
You don't see the slide?
No, we don't. I don't see it. Maybe it's my colleague. Есть слайд, коллеги, с результатами.
Do you see?
We see the
this slide?
Нет, не видно. Нет слайда.
No, we don't see it. It doesn't move. We see the text only, the technical results.
Okay. Oh, that's strange because I see it.
Okay, now we see.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That's the problem with the Russian and English presentation, Edward.
Yeah, no problem. Let's go on. You have 10 minutes left maximum.
Oh, okay, well, that's enough time for me. Thank you. I was telling you about the body weights of females, turkey females in the flock. And what you can see here after 28 days, that they are almost on the standard body weight from 100%. House 1 is the yellow line and house 2 is the red line. And the green line is the standard. So I think these are very nice results after this challenging period in rearing. The next slide is from males. And also here you can see that they have a very high body weight after the rearing period. Then they drop a little bit towards the standard, but still very good results for body weights, just using probiotics in the rearing period and 1 week after transfer. And the different colors are the different houses. So house 3, 4, and 5. And the green line again is the standard. Well, here a lot of figures, but I just want to point out that our turkeys, our heavy turkeys, I'm sorry, I have to go back. Our heavy turkeys are slaughtered in Germany. And so we get the slaughter reports from the German slaughterhouse. And what you can see is that I will try to point out here, this is the slaughtering report of the female hens I showed you in the last graph. And you see that body weights are just good well, they are just not 16 weeks old, I think 15 weeks and a few days. And you see a body weight of 10.32. at the left side and 10.34 at the right side, with very low rejection rates. Here, do you see my pointer?
Yes, we see.
Okay, well, here you see the rejection rates, only 0.07 on the left side and 0.17 on the right side. And also, if you look at the body parts, rejection of body parts, well, these are the kilograms, so 214 kilograms of body parts are rejected, which is only 0.42%. And on the right side, 80 kilograms are only 0.45%. So I think good results for slaughtering females. If you put this together in a graph, and excuse me again in Dutch, but I will explain it to you. These are female hens slaughtered, and I think the most important figures are here in the bottom side. This is the growth per day, so almost 99 grams per day, and the total rejection is below 1%. So a very good result for a flock with no antibiotic use and only probiotics. Some more figures. Forget the left side because these are females again. Sorry, these are males because of the body weights, but they say it are females, but these are males. And you see the body weight here on the left, 21.5 kilograms and 20.37 kilograms on the right side. If you look at the rejections, well, from the total turkeys, 0.56% is rejected and 0.64% is rejected here. And the main reason for rejection is breast blisters and some injuries. If you look at body parts, then you see that 207 kilograms are rejected on the left side, 1.18%, and 880 kilograms, 1.01% on the right side. Again, a table with the figures put together, and if we look to the downside of this figure, then you see the growth per day is in average, well, let's say 147 grams, and the total rejection is here in average below 2%. So also for heavy turkey breeds, heavy turkey males, good results, I would say. Okay, what are my conclusions? Well, conclusions are that it is possible to keep turkeys without severe problems if you succeed to manage them well and to keep the circumstances well in the houses. And despite less use of antibiotics or almost no use of antibiotics, we can still have very good technical results. If you can manage circumstances well, a lot of infections are subclinical. And the last sentence, a happy turkey is a happy farmer and a happy vet, and of course, a happy slaughterhouse. Well, and that is all what I wanted to tell you today. Thank you very much for your attention and for inviting me, Edward, for this presentation.
You're welcome, and thank you very much, Mark. It was very practical, useful.